Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to convert fractions to decimals. And there are two methods that we're going to discuss today. But before we get into those two methods, let me just give you an example. So I'm talking about the fraction 1/2, 1/2. You know as a decimal that is 0.5. So you've done some of this already. You know some of these quick ones that you've already memorized, what they are as decimals. Well, there's going to be a lot of fractions that you don't have memorized, and we're going to show you today how to make them into decimals. So the first one that we're going to talk about is method 1. There's two methods, and we're going to start with the first one. This is to take your fraction, make another equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. Now I know right now this probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you, but let me show you what it means and you can get an idea. So let's start with the fraction 12/25. I want to make this into a decimal. But before I make it into a decimal, I have to figure out what is this going to be as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. So we've done a bunch of these in class already. So you would ask yourself, how many times does 25 go into 100? 25, 50, 75, 100. 25 goes into 100 4 times. So when we work with equivalent fractions, whatever we do on the bottom, which is 25 times 4, you're going to do on the top. So now we're going to figure out what 12 times 4 is, and the answer is 48. Now, when you have that numerator turns into your decimal. So I have 48 as a numerator. This is 48 out of 100, or 48 over 100, which turns into 0.48. So let me show you another example so you can kind of get a grasp of what we're doing here. In this example, I have 2/5. Again, I have a denominator of 100. I need to figure out how many times does 5 go into 100. Well, 5 goes into 100 20 times. So 5 times 20 is 100. Now again, whatever we've done to the bottom, we're going to do to the top. So I need to figure out what 2 times 20 is, and that's 40. So to convert this to a decimal, you take that numerator and you write it as a decimal. So I'm talking about 40/100ths, 40 over 100. So now I have 0.40. And if you look at the decimal closely, this decimal goes out to the hundredths place value. So the 4 is in the tenths place value, and the 0 is the hundredths place value. So I've taken that numerator and essentially put a decimal point in front of it and said, this is my new decimal. So if you can change your fraction into another fraction, an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100, this is a very easy way to do this math. Now, not all numbers go into 100. This works very well if you have 5 as a denominator, as we've seen, or 25 as a denominator, which is the one we did first. It also works well with 10, because you know 10 times 10 is 100. It also works well with 20, because 20 times 5 is 100. And 50, because with 50 you know that you can just double it. But not all numbers go into 100. So for example, 6 does not go into 100. 7 does not go into 100. So when you come across those fractions with a number that does not go into 100, you have to do a slightly different process. And that's what we're going to talk about next. That's going to be method 2. So one of the last things I want to show you, just to re-emphasize this before we move on, is that I'm giving you examples here where your fraction is less than the whole number 1. These are small fractions. They are less than 1, so your decimal is going to be less than 1. If you get into this process and you are having these big decimals, maybe something's gone wrong. And we're going to get lots of practice with this in class. So you'll begin to see that all your decimals are going to be smaller. They're going to not have a lot of whole numbers in front of them. So kind of hold that like in the back of your mind for class tomorrow. Okay, the second method for this is long division. So like I said, not all fractions, not all these denominators go into 100. The method 1 doesn't work for 6, it doesn't work for 7, it doesn't work for 9, it doesn't work for 11. There's a few numbers it won't work for. So you're going to have to then solve it by doing long division. So let's see an example. So in this example, I have the fraction 5/8. and I need to figure out how am I going to make this into a decimal. So we set it up as a division problem. Now you're going to get a good amount of practice with this tomorrow in class, but something I want you to think about now is your denominator is going to go on the outside. So your denominator goes on the outside and your numerator will go inside underneath the division symbol. And we're going to re-emphasize this in class tomorrow. But for this example, think that your denominator goes on the outside. Your denominator will always go on the outside. So you're going to ask yourself, how many times does 8 go into 5? Well, 8 goes into 5 0 times. So now I need to expand this 5 with a decimal point so I have more zeros to work with, because otherwise I'd be stopped right now. Oh, 8 doesn't go into 5. I can't do any more work. So how many times does 8 go into 5? 0 times. So I'm going to put the 0 up top, add the decimal point, and we're going to move on to the next part by asking, how many times does 8 go into 50? Well, 8 goes into 50 6 times. So 8 times 6 is 48, and I have a remainder of 2. Okay, now we're going to have to bring down that extra 0. And you can now ask yourself, how many times does 8 go into 20? Well, 8 goes into 22 times. So 8 times 2 is 16, and I have this remainder of 4. Okay. I'm not quite done. This decimal keeps going on. You can't just stop at some point and say, I'm done. We're going to go a little bit further to see if we can end it. I feel like the process, we just need to do one more step and it will end. Okay, so I have 4. I can't put 8 into 4, so I'm going to bring down one more 0. How many times does 8 go into 40? It goes in 5 times. So 5 times 8 is 40. I have a remainder of 0. So now I've finished this long division. When I look at this, I can now tell you that my answer is 5/8 equals 0.625, or 625 thousandths. So I've done the division up top, and now I've given you the answer down below. This is exactly what you're going to be doing in class. So again, my fraction is less than 1, and that decimal is less than 1. And if you look at it a little bit closer, you can see 5/8 is a little bit more than half, because half of 8 is 4. So I know 5/8 is a little bit more than half. And my decimal is a little bit more than half. These are some of those self-checking mechanisms that we're going to teach you in class. Okay, these are the two methods. First one is making a fraction equivalent to something that has a denominator of 100. That's kind of the quick, easy way. And then the second method is long division. You do have questions to answer after this video, so go to those and bring any questions you have for class tomorrow.